The movie begins with a few men traveling in a car. They stop in the middle of a deserted forest and get out. Suddenly, the man walking behind shoots the man in front of him and kills him on the spot. After this, we are introduced to a man named Terry Husk, who has just arrived in a new town. As soon as Terry reaches the city, he goes to book a hotel room. While there, his attention is drawn to a white pride poster hanging on the wall. The poster says that being proud of one's color is not wrong and encourages people to reclaim their so-called birthright. This poster clearly belongs to a group that promotes white supremacist ideology. Next, the story shifts to December 18, 1983 in Washington. Outside a bank, 4 men are sitting inside a car. After a short while, 3 of them step out, wear masks, and enter the bank. Inside, they threaten everyone with guns and force the bank manager to open the safe. At the same time, one person inside the bank triggers the alarm. Even so, the manager begins opening the safe. As soon as it opens, the robbers start stuffing all the cash into bags. Meanwhile, a police car arrives outside the bank. One police officer gets out and is about to enter, but another robber named David, who is sitting in the getaway car, steps out wearing a mask and points a gun at the officer. Inside the bank, the robbers finish collecting the money and escape. Before leaving, David shoots the tires of the police car, then jumps back into the car with his partners, and they flee the scene. While driving away, the group is extremely happy after seeing how much money they have looted. Their leader, Bob, takes the car to his house and shows the stolen money to his wife, Zilla, who is also very happy seeing such a large amount of cash. The next morning, we return to Terry Husk, who goes to join his new job at the local police station. Terry is actually a police officer who has recently transferred to this town. At the station, he meets a local officer named Loft Lane. Loft Lane jokes that Terry looks bored already. Terry replies that he does have a question. He has seen white power posters around town and wants to know who these people are, where they operate from, and how far their base is. At that moment, another officer named Jamie Bowen, who is standing nearby, says that this organization operates from a place called Hayden Lake, which is not very far from there. Terry walks over to Jamie to light his cigarette and leaves his lighter on the table. After Terry exits the station, Jamie follows him outside to return the lighter. Jamie then tells Terry that the white power activity is not limited to just posters and pamphlets. Jamie takes Terry to his home, where he introduces him to his wife and young daughter. Inside the house, Jamie shows Terry several pieces of evidence he has collected. Jamie explains that the group Terry is asking about is also printing fake currency. Terry asks where he got the fake note from. Jamie explains that he received it from his childhood friend named Walter West. He shows Terry Walter's photo and explains that they grew up together and went to the same high school. Jamie says that a few weeks ago, he ran into Walter at a bar where Walter was heavily drunk. Walter handed him the fake note and said, "This is just the beginning." Terry asks, "The beginning of what?" Jamie then shows Terry a newspaper clipping and explains that the same group has carried out a bombing at a Jewish synagogue, robbed a porn store earlier in October, and Terry has already heard about the recent bank robbery. Terry asks if Walter told Jamie that his group was responsible for all of this. Jamie replies that Walter only told him that the group possesses explosives and that they are preparing to carry out something much bigger. Jamie further explains that this group is also collecting a huge amount of money for a larger mission. Terry asks where Walter is right now. Jamie replies that Walter has been missing for the last 2 weeks. Jamie even went to Walter's house and met his family and wife, but they refused to file a missing person report. Next, the movie introduces Bob Matthews, the same man who organized the White Power group. Bob notices that his followers have burned a cross. He immediately tells them that from now on, no one will burn crosses because they do not want unnecessary attention. Bob then meets a man named Sam and says he is glad that Sam came to meet them. Sam replies that David had told him that Bob was planning an operation, but looking at the atmosphere here, it feels more like Bob is trying to build an army and needs someone to train them. Bob agrees and says that is exactly why they called Sam. Bob shows him stacks of cash and tells him that they can pay him $1,000 per month. He says they are planning a revolution in the country and need someone who can start it with violence. Bob asks Sam if he is willing to work for them, and Sam agrees. So, Bob Matthews and his group want to start a revolution within the country. For this purpose, they are robbing banks, printing fake currency, and buying weapons in large quantities. In the next scene, Terry goes to a bar and meets a young woman named Joanne, who is also his friend. While talking to her, Terry asks about the bank robbery case. Since Joanne is also a police officer, she explains that 3 armed men and 1 driver were involved in the robbery. After the robbery, they abandoned the car in a deserted area. No fingerprints or solid evidence were found inside the bank, and the car used was an old one, bought for just $500. Terry tells Joanne that there is an officer named Jamie at the sheriff's office who believes that the robbers are following the Aryan Nation ideology and that they also possess explosives. The Aryan Nation was an anti-Semitic group that believed in Nazi ideology. They hated Jewish people and wanted to establish white supremacy while rejecting all other races. Bob and his group were also working to spread this same ideology. In the next scene, Jamie takes Terry to the house of Walter, the man who gave Jamie the fake currency. At Walter's house, they meet his wife Bonnie Sue, who had gone to high school with Jamie. Seeing Jamie, Bonnie Sue immediately asks if Walter is dead. Terry asks why she never filed a missing person report and when she last spoke to Walter. Bonnie replies that she last met him about 3 weeks ago, when he was with some friends. Terry firmly asks who those friends were and what she is trying to hide, and where they can find those people. Because of Terry's strict tone, Bonnie starts crying and walks away. Jamie follows her and calms her down. Bonnie then reveals that the last time Walter was seen, he was with Gary and Bruce. Jamie asks if she means Bruce Pierce, and Bonnie confirms it. She says she had warned Walter that going with those people was dangerous. Bruce and his friends were recruiting young men into their group. Bonnie explains that the last time Walter left with them, he told her they were going hunting. When Jamie asks where they were going hunting, Bonnie does not answer and starts crying. Jamie understands that they must have gone to Bruce's usual hunting location. Jamie knows Bruce well and also knows where he goes hunting. He takes Terry to that place. There, they find an old, abandoned cabin that is completely wrecked. Terry searches the area and finds a red book lying on the ground, but nothing else significant at first. As Terry steps outside, he notices a spot where the ground looks like it was dug up and covered again. Terry and Jamie start removing the soil, and soon they see a human face buried underneath. Jamie immediately recognizes it. It is Walter's body. Walter is the same man who was killed at the very beginning of the movie by Bruce and Gary. Soon, the police arrive and recover Walter's body. Terry asks Jamie to tell him where Hayden Lake is located. Jamie takes Terry to that place, where they see men dressed like soldiers carrying guns. Terry and Jamie notice that the area has been heavily constructed, and Nazi symbols are painted on the building. They go there and meet a man named Richard Butler, who founded this entire group. Terry takes out photos of Gary and Bruce and shows them to Richard Butler, asking if he knows where these two men are. Richard Butler replies that Gary and Bruce had lost self-control and that he does not know where they are anymore. Terry then shows Richard Butler a photo of Walter and says that he must know him. Terry explains that they have heard that all three men were once connected to Butler's church, and after leaving the group, some of the boys formed their own group, which is slowly becoming more powerful. Richard Butler again claims that he does not know where Gary and Bruce are. As Terry and Jamie are about to leave, they notice a book lying there. Terry asks Richard Butler about it. Butler says it is a fiction book given to children to read. Terry realizes that it is the same type of book he had found earlier at the place where Walter's body was discovered. Next, the movie shows Bob Matthews, who has recruited many people like himself into his group. Bob takes an oath along with his followers and their families, declaring that they will pick up weapons, push their enemies toward the sea, and reclaim the land that belonged to their ancestors. Bob's group starts producing fake currency in large quantities. Later, Bob is driving somewhere when Richard Butler suddenly appears in front of his car. Bob gets out, and Richard Butler warns him that he is playing with fire and going down the wrong path. Butler tells him that they are not thieves, that the FBI is already after him, and that Walter's body has been found. Richard Butler says that their goal was the same, and that within the next 10 years, many of their members could have entered Parliament and brought change legally. Bob responds that Butler's problem is that he moves too slowly and still achieves nothing. Bob tells him that he is done with him, gets into his car, and drives away. In the next scene, Jamie's wife is standing outside her house when a car pulls up. A man inside the car hands her a book, asking her to give it to Jamie. She takes the book inside and gives it to Jamie. When Jamie opens it, he finds Gary's name and address written inside. Gary is the same man Jamie and Terry have been searching for, the one involved in Walter's murder. Jamie rushes outside to find the man who gave the book, but the car has already driven away. Jamie, Terry, and the police team go to Gary's house, but Gary is not there. However, they find materials used to make explosives inside the house. The movie then shows Gary sitting inside a porn store, planting explosives. He leaves the store, gets into his car, and soon after, a massive explosion occurs. Gary contacts Bob over the walkie-talkie and informs him that the blast has happened. Upon hearing this, Bob tells his men to get ready. His followers pick up weapons and put on masks. Meanwhile, Terry and Jamie also receive the explosion news over the walkie-talkie. Terry immediately realizes that this is a distraction and says that the real operation must be happening somewhere else. At the same time, Bob's men capture the guards of an armored truck and force them to open it. Once the doors open, they hold the guards at gunpoint and start transferring bags of money into their vehicles. Terry and Jamie receive news about the armored truck robbery and rush toward the location. Bob's men try to escape with the money just as Terry arrives. Terry starts firing at their vehicle, but they manage to escape. Another vehicle appears behind Terry. It is Bob and his men. They aim their weapons at Terry, but do not shoot. Terry locks eyes with Bob, who is driving while wearing a mask. Bob drives away, and Terry is unable to fire at him. In the next scene, Terry and Jamie are sitting in a bar. Soon, Officer Joanne arrives and angrily blames Terry, saying that because of him, the robbers escaped again and that he will no longer lead the operation. Furious, Terry leaves the bar, goes home, and drinks heavily. The next day, Terry goes to a riverbank. He spots a reindeer and quietly aims his gun, preparing to hunt it. At that exact moment, Bob is standing behind Terry, aiming his weapon at him. Terry does not shoot the animal and slowly turns around. Terry realizes that someone is behind him. He starts putting his equipment back into his car when he notices another vehicle parked nearby. Terry walks toward the car and sees Bob sitting inside. Bob tells Terry that luck wasn't on his side today. Terry replies that Bob had already hidden earlier and asks if Bob has been following him. Bob calmly says yes, adding that Terry might need him someday. Terry laughs at this, and Bob drives away. Later, the movie shows Richard Butler giving a speech to the people of his community. In the middle of the speech, Bob suddenly appears, and everyone turns to look at him. Bob greets them, saying good morning to his brothers and sisters. He says he won't speak much, because for years they have only been listening to speeches. Bob accuses Richard Butler of doing nothing but talking for years, while people gave up their jobs, homes, and lifestyles for this cause, yet achieved nothing. Bob declares that the time for sacrifice is over, and that it is now time to fight for themselves and for their families. He says they must reclaim the land where only people like them should live. Hearing this, the crowd starts chanting, "White Power," fully supporting Bob. Richard Butler quietly leaves the place, realizing that the people who once followed him are no longer satisfied with his methods. In the next scene, Terry is at Jamie's house during a children's party. While alone inside the house, Terry notices a book lying there, the same book that an unknown man had given to Jamie's wife. Terry starts examining it when Jamie arrives and explains that the book describes 6 steps: first recruitment, then fundraising, then armed revolution, then terrorizing people, then murder, and finally, Day of the Rope, which means publicly hanging people. Terry asks if Jamie has told anyone about that. Jamie replies that he hasn't because no one would take him seriously. The movie then shows Bob's team producing fake currency on a large scale. They also start purchasing automatic weapons in bulk and training with them. Bob and his group are then shown listening to a radio show by Alan Berg, who openly criticizes and mocks them on air. Alan says they target Jewish people because they are easy targets. Angered by this, Bob tells his men that it's time to execute step 5, which means killing someone to spread fear. Alan Berg finishes his radio show and walks toward his car. As he steps out, Bob's man Bruce opens fire on him, killing Alan Berg on the spot. After this, Terry is at the police station, informing his team that the people who killed Alan Berg are planning something much bigger. Jamie explains that this group follows a fictional book and consists of white separatists who want to wage war against the US government. He again outlines their 6-step plan: recruitment, fundraising through robberies, buying weapons, training, killing people, and finally armed revolution. One officer asks what the 6th step is. Jamie replies that it is armed revolution. Terry clarifies that this means large-scale terrorist attacks, bombings, taking over the Capitol, and even assassinating the president. When asked if this group has a name, Terry says they follow a book called The Order. Officer Lofton adds that he has heard of this book before. Next, the movie shows Tony at a gun shop buying several weapons. When the shop owner asks for his ID, Tony provides it and signs the paperwork. He loads all the weapons into his car. Tony is also part of Bob's group. Terry angrily confronts Lofton, reminding him that 2 years earlier he had arrested a man carrying the book, The Order. Terry asks for that file. Lofton says his entire trunk is filled with files on white supremacists and hands Terry the file of David Lane, the man arrested 2 years earlier. Terry asks where David Lane can be found. Lofton suggests checking his parents' house. Terry and Joanne visit David Lane's parents, who say they don't know where David is. They say the last they heard, David was in Washington, working for someone. David's mother brings out an old photograph and mentions that the man's name might have been Matthew. David's father then remembers his full name, Bob Matthews. When Terry sees the photo, he recognizes Bob Matthews as the same man he had already encountered. The movie then shows Bob planning something with his team. Outside, Bob's wife Debbie meets a woman named Lana in a car. Debbie realizes Bob is having an affair with Lana. She confronts Bob and tells him she is pregnant with his child. Bob reassures her, saying he loves only her and hugs her. Soon after, Terry and his team locate one of Bob's hideouts. They raid the place but find no one inside. However, they discover bomb-making materials, fake currency machines, and weapons. The movie then shifts to July 19, 1984, California, as an armored truck is seen driving along the road. Bob's team also starts chasing the armored truck. On the other hand, Terry's team fails to find any of Bob's men at the location, so they detain Bob's wife, Debbie, and begin questioning her. Meanwhile, Bob's men block the armored truck by placing their vehicle in front of it. Bob threatens the driver with a gun, forcing him to stop. Bob then steps out of the vehicle and shoots the truck's tires, disabling it. After that, his team quickly unloads all the cash from the armored truck and escapes from the scene. Soon, Terry's team receives information about the robbery. Terry asks Joanne how much money was stolen, and she tells him that approximately $3.6 million were taken. This frustrates the police even more, as despite all their efforts, they are still unable to arrest anyone. Later, Terry and Jamie are discussing the case inside a car when Joanne arrives with new information. She tells them that they have identified the man who purchased weapons from the gun shop. Police arrest Tony, the man who bought the weapons. During interrogation, Terry asks Tony where Bob is. Tony says he doesn't know Bob's location, but explains that he was given a phone number. Whenever he called it, one of Bob's men would come to pick him up and take him to Bob. At Terry's request, Tony calls that number. He waits at a restaurant, where Gary arrives and takes Tony with him. Terry and Jamie secretly follow their car from a distance. Gary brings Tony to a motel room where Bob is hiding. When Bob meets Tony, he apologizes and asks whether the police caught him and if he told them anything. Tony says he didn't tell the police anything. Bob reassures him, saying that they are all brothers, and that even if Tony had said something, it wouldn't be a big problem. He just wants the truth. Tony starts crying and repeats that he told the police nothing. Bob then lets Tony go, and Tony leaves the motel. From his car, Terry sees Bob and recognizes him. Terry steps out and moves toward Bob's motel room. Bob comes out of the room with his gun ready, and Terry orders him to drop his weapon. At the same time, Gary is waiting downstairs and opens fire at Terry. Terry ducks, while Bob jumps from the motel balcony and escapes toward the back. Jamie pulls out his gun and fires in Bob's direction as police vehicles arrive at the scene. Gary attempts to flee, but Jamie enters the room and arrests him, handing him over to the police. Meanwhile, Terry continues chasing Bob. Jamie joins Terry, but despite Terry telling him to slow down, Jamie moves ahead. Bob is hiding behind a car, aiming his weapon. As Jamie steps into view, Bob shoots him twice. Terry fires back, but Bob manages to escape again. Terry rushes to Jamie and tries to stop the bleeding, but Jamie dies from his injuries. Later, Terry goes to Jamie's house. Jamie's wife comes outside, pulls her child close, and walks back inside without saying a word, clearly devastated. Terry and Joanne then meet Bob's wife, Debbie. Debbie says that Bob chose her over many other women. Terry tells her bluntly that Bob doesn't care about anyone. Everything he's doing is for himself, and he's planning something that could get hundreds of people killed. Terry asks for her help in locating Bob. After thinking for a moment, Debbie explains that Bob always plans ahead. She believes that if he escaped, he would go to a specific house, and that he must be there right now. Terry thanks her and assures her that Bob will never know she helped them. Debbie replies that it doesn't matter anyway, because Bob will never be taken alive. The story then moves to December 7th, 1984. Police surround a house in Washington where Bob and his companions are hiding. Two of Bob's men, David and Bruce, attempt to flee through the back door, but are captured by the police. Bob sees this, but refuses to run. Police throw smoke bombs into the house and attempt to enter, but Bob opens fire from upstairs, forcing them to retreat. The police decide to set the house on fire to force Bob out. Terry warns them that Bob won't come out and that they will burn him alive, but the police ignore him and set the house ablaze. Bob remains inside. Terry enters the burning house with his gun and tries to arrest Bob, but Bob refuses and locks the door. Moments later, the house burns down completely, killing Bob along with it. For the next 2 years, police continue investigating the case. Eventually, all remaining members of the Order are arrested. So friends, now it's your turn. Tell us in the comment section how you liked this video. If you enjoyed it, type YES in the comments and let us know you watched till the end. Also, hit the like button and let's complete a target of 500 likes on this video. Share this video with your friends who love crime, thriller, and true story movies. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, because the picture is still remaining, my friend. But